Welcome back to Banfield. I'm Brian Entin in for Ashleigh tonight. Remembering Gabby Petito. The city of Northport, Florida today unveiled a memorial bench in Gabby's honor. It is covered in steel butterflies, a favorite of Gabby's, and a plaque which includes a Bible passage, Matthew 18:20. For where two or three are gathered together in my name, there am I in the midst of them. Aaron Betzner, the designer who worked with Gabby's family to make the bench happen, says he went with a 3-person design instead of the usual 2-person because he wanted it to be a place where people can come and sit, reflect on their own life, reflect on Gabby, kind of a little sanctuary space. It's located near the Northport City Hall. That is where that makeshift memorial to Gabby once stood. We were out there so many days. Supporters from across the country traveled to visit the memorial, bringing teddy bears, flowers, posters, and all sorts of mementos. They also came to Northport to try and find some answers. So many answers that we still need even right now, 2 months after Gabby's remains were found in Wyoming and a month after Brian Laundrie's was found dead. Both cases remain open and active right now, still to this day. I'm joined by retired FBI agent Jennifer Coffindaffer. Jennifer, you and I were out there together in Northport. We were in the swamp together. We became friends from that experience. We were getting new information every single day, basically, updates either from police or the FBI or other sources. And then basically, boom, it all just stopped. And we've learned really nothing new in quite some time, yet we know the investigations are ongoing. What do you think the holdup is?
Well, initially, Brian, to understand why there is this slow incoming of information, we have to understand that initially, up until they found Brian Laundrie's body, this was a grand jury investigation. 23 people seated, a prosecutor, assistant United States attorney specifically involved, presenting evidence to them through witnesses such as FBI agents, actual witnesses that knew things, coroner that would come in and give information. So this is a very long and tedious process. There were grand jury subpoenas issued for cell records, for bank records, for CCTV, and more than that, everything that encompassed that investigation. So it takes days for that information to be compiled and then to be returned by an FBI agent who presents that information to the grand jury. All that was going on prior to them finding the remains of Brian Laundrie.
But Jennifer, the FBI never officially, up until this point, connected Brian Laundrie to Gabby Petito's death. Of course, they've called him a person of interest, and we've sort of put the pieces together. But don't they have an obligation at some point to come clean with the public and say, look, we think Brian did it, and this is why? Because if they don't do that, aren't we all sort of left to wonder, what really happened?
Absolutely. I think actually it was really semantics when we're talking about a person of interest. Brian Laundrie was definitely the subject of this investigation from all the evidence that was out there publicly and that was supported, I believe, by evidence that was further collected by the FBI. The FBI will make a determination, not obviously through a grand jury now, because we don't need a true bill returned or a no bill returned by a grand jury. They don't need to find probable cause. This case is not going to trial. But they need to let the public know, or if not, we have, in a sense, somebody who committed this murder out there. So the FBI will release some sort of presser indicating who they believe was responsible for this crime.
And every week, Jennifer, I make all of my beat calls on this case. I call, the Northport Police Department. Last thing they told me was that they can't release any more information or any of our records requests because it's still technically an open investigation with the FBI. I also call and contact the FBI. The last thing they told me was continue to check our Twitter for updates, which I actually sort of thought was interesting because they didn't just say no comment. They said continue to check our Twitter, which I thought, okay, great. Maybe something's going to come on the Twitter. The other thing that I'm always checking, like obsessively almost every day, is I go on Pacer, which for those of you that don't know, that's the federal court system, and I check the bank fraud case out of Wyoming. Brian Laundrie had that federal bank fraud case out of Wyoming, and that is still listed as active. That has not been closed, and it's still open. So my question is, why is that still active if we presume that Brian Laundrie is dead?
Right. Well, that has to maintain being opened until a death certificate is obtained, the actual proof and acknowledgement that Brian Laundrie is dead. I also do want to give kudos, Brian, to the FBI at this point because they got the case on September 19th. And if I recall correctly, it was about September 23rd that an indictment was issued for the use, unlawful use of an access device. And so from that point, they very quickly charged him with a crime so they could get a full-on manhunt for him initiated.
Is there any chance, Jennifer, that the reason we're not hearing much right now is because they are still investigating the Laundries?
Well, that has to be a part of this investigation. Look, Brian, you know, if they find that the Laundries covered up this matter in any way, they could be held responsible. Let me give you a couple scenarios. For an example, if the clothing that he wore when this crime was committed, again, making the educated presumption that Brian Laundrie was responsible for this crime, if they somehow got rid of this, his clothing or any indicia of the crime, they could be held responsible. Also, if they erased text messages or something where Brian implicated himself in any way to them, all of these things could be used against them potentially. Do I think that they're probably going to be charged with the evidence we have out in the public? No, but the FBI could have more information pertaining to an obstruction charge.
And one of the top questions I get, and I know you're also very active on Twitter, and we're sort of inundated with messages all the time about the Gabby Petito case because people want more information. One of the most popular ones I get is about the notebook. The notebook that was found in the Carlton Reserve near Brian Laundrie's remains. The last we heard was that they thought it was salvageable, but we don't know what messages were in it. Do you think there's going to be important information in that notebook?
Well, I have to tell you, in my career, it's been amazing what the FBI lab can do with information that has been written. They can get ink that seemingly is gone to jump back off the page. I've seen pages of notebook and paper that looks blank, but they can detect indentations that when you write, indent into the paper, and they can come and they can make those messages pop right off the page. It's amazing what they can do. We don't know the condition that the writing in this notebook was in when it was recovered. Was it pencil? Was it pen? Was it washed away? And I believe the FBI is using all their chemical techniques and other techniques to get everything they can out of that notebook. Depending on how much was written in there, Brian, you can imagine it may be a long, tedious process, but they can do it.
Yeah, and absolutely. And it seems like they've got the tools needed to do that. I just want to mention, you know, I've been in touch with the Petitos. Obviously, they're still going through incredible grief, but they've now got this mission and this platform moving forward to help others, other victims of domestic violence, other missing person cases. I mean, I know, Jennifer, you've also been touched by their story, and I think it's worth mentioning that they're now going into this phase of their own grief where they want to help others. And I think, you know, it's incredible. You see there the Gabby Petito Foundation. You can go to their website, and they're really starting to get going with this thing. And I know you've worked with a lot of victims' families over the years, Jennifer, but I'm sure you agree it's special that they're going this direction.
Oh, it truly is. And what I've really liked being a part of and seeing happen is this whole Twitter community come alive and do whatever they can to help in other cases. I know of a specific case where the Twitter community was called together and they called a department that was responsible for investigating a missing person, and an Amber Alert hadn't been issued. And they just called and sort of inundated this department in hopes that this public outcry would help facilitate an Amber Alert. Now, I don't know how much that played into it, but I think it played into it somewhat. And I think it's wonderful what Gabby Petito, the foundation, this whole movement that's began where people involved in the cyber world are helping in these investigations. It's amazing, really.
Yeah, it is incredible. You and I have made a lot of friends out there that have done a lot of good. People at home behind their computers literally getting to work. And you know who you are if you're watching, and pushing police departments to do Amber Alerts. So it's incredible, the community that's been formed. So thank you, Jennifer, for being part of that. Thanks for being on the show tonight, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.